Hey y'all, it is, gosh, what today? Tuesday. I'm just going to give a little response here to one of the people that asked a question about um, if you take early retirement and then you prevail on your disability case. And this is for obviously people in their 60s. Um, Bear with me. I'm not even at my regular office. I am in Statesville, North Carolina, working here, but also dealing with some family issues down here in the interim. And that's one of the reasons why I came down to work down here. But in any event, the question was, okay, so if you start a claim at 64, which is one of the older, very, very older ages to file for SSD, but we do see it. And considering that there's 3 years between 64 and 67 to file for SSD, where if you didn't and you took early retirement, you would be discounted worthy of 3 years of discount permanently. So filing for SSD, if you think you're disabled, I think it's a really good idea. It's something you should consider, even though it might be a bit of a headache. Okay, so the question was, you start a claim at 64, you prevail at age 66 in a few months. Do you get the back reimbursement? If they found that you were disabled at 64 or at any time before 5 months before uh, when they found you disabled, in other words, if the if the 5 month waiting period is eaten up in that back period of time, yeah, you're going to get, it's not reimbursement. It's just that you're going to get your back benefits that have now been determined that you were disabled. Just because logistically it took a couple of years for them to get through the process and make a finding that you were disabled way back when, you will get those retro benefits. Notice that we don't get interest though, however. Um, Now, in this case, the person started collecting early retirement close in time, shortly after, I believe, filing for Social Security disability, at a slight reduction from the amount from FRA, full retirement age. Okay, so my reply was, and this is just putting it in a verbal form for you, the months that you collect early retirement while you're waiting for your SSD and hopefully waiting for a win on that, the months that you collected early retirement that are in hindsight later determined to be disabled months, to the extent that none of them, the ones that are not in the 5 month waiting period that you got early retirement for, you will now get a little extra bonus for those months to make it up to the level that SSD would be. Because remember, SSD is generally the same as the full retirement amount, give or take. So if you're docked by 15%, you're going to get all those 15% for all those months of early retirement uh, added up and sent to you as part of your back benefits. Now, if you asserted a disability onset date that preceded when you filed for or collected early retirement, and you do prevail on that date, and 5 months pass and you're still disabled, in hindsight, and you were not collecting early retirement at that time, you didn't collect till a later time, then those would be full SSD back benefit months because you didn't have and didn't at the time collect early retirement, which obviously you can't collect both. So when we talk about the offset, it's like an offset. Whatever you collected in early retirement that should have been disability, you're going to get that extra. You're not going to get the whole disability check because you already received, say, 80% of it or 75% or 70%, depending on, what kind of a discount you had, which depends, of course, on how early you filed for early retirement. Just a reminder, the earlier you file for retirement prior to your full retirement age, which for most people now is 67, the earlier you do it, the smaller your benefit's going to be. It's not going to be what it would be if you took it at full retirement age, which is also a reminder that if you could delay up to age 70, you greatly increase your benefit amount quite a bit more than what it would be if you took it at your full retirement age at 67 or whatever that age may be for you. So I think it goes up like another 30 something percent by just waiting between 67 and 70. Of course, a lot of us can't do that. But for those that can and can get by and feel like they're going to be living for a long time, sometimes it's worth it to have more later versus taking it now. But it's definitely a personal choice. I've had loved ones die after just a few years of early retirement, and I'm glad they took it because otherwise they'd not seen anything. Anyway, okay, thank you, Lisa, for that question. The back benefits for SSD when you collect early retirement. You're not going to get the big amount, but you've already been collecting part of it already, so that's why. All right, I am out of here, guys. I'm going to go enjoy my evening, and I will talk to you later. Bye. Hey, so let's talk a little bit about back pay. Seems to be a little confusion out there. There's two programs. There's the SSI program, which is Supplemental Security Income, the federal welfare program, and there is Social Security Disability Insurance, which is not a welfare program, but is insurance that we all buy and pay for when we work and pay taxes. Okay, so the Social Security Administration runs both. So what's the deal about back pay when you apply and you prevail? Both programs do provide for back pay, but in a different way. So with SSI, you do not get any retroactive benefits that precede the date of your application. So you can't apply today and talk about how you were disabled and even prove you were disabled for the last year, and also meeting the other non-medical criteria necessary for SSI, which would mainly be that poorness factor. You can't retroactively ask for it for any of the months before you actually applied. However, if it takes them 2 years to figure out your SSI, you're going to get, assuming they find you disabled back when you applied, and if you claim to be disabled at the time, which obviously you would have, they will pay you back those 2 years. So it is retroactive from the date they decide. It's just not going to go retroactive past the date you applied. And stay tuned for something about a protective filing date that you need to know about. Now, for Social Security Disability, it's different. They can go back and pay you up to 12 months of benefits, monthly benefits, for months that preceded the date you applied. So, little extra catch there. So you do get to go back before the date you applied, which is great. That's why I think it helps people not apply the second they think they are unable to work, because they might get better, but you don't want to screw yourself either. So the fact that it will go back so that people have time to wait to see if they're going to apply is a really beneficial thing, both for saving resources in the government and for giving people time to evaluate their situations and not feel rushed to go apply. There is a thing called a 5-month waiting period that applies to Social Security Disability, does not apply to SSI. SSI won't go retroactive before the date you applied, while SSD will, but SSD, Social Security Disability, has that 5-month waiting period. What that means is from the date that the SSA determines that you did become disabled, the first 5 months are not payable. It is a waiting period. Like a lot of insurances have a waiting period. So that's theirs, the first 5 months. So if it's actually from the month you become disabled, you take the next 5 months as being unpayable, and then that 6th month would be your first date of retroactive benefits, should they agree that you became disabled in that month before the 5-month waiting period. Okay, so when we look at a Social Security disability claim, if you stopped working and believe you were disabled on a particular date, you want to get your application in within 17 months, or else you're going to start losing some of those 12 months you would have been paid, because the 12 months plus the 5-month waiting period that you're not able to be paid upon, those first 5 months of it, comes to 17 months. So you don't ever want to wait more than 17 months to apply for at the time when you thought you were disabled. Doesn't mean you're necessarily going to prove that month you became disabled under the rules, and being actually disabled, you have to be able to prove it. So what you know you are undergoing doesn't so much matter as what your medical evidence is going to show, because they have to find it based on medical evidence. Okay, so again, SSI It will go retroactive until back to the date you applied, but not earlier. Social Security disability, they can pay up to 12 months of payments that precede your date of application. Okay. Now, what was that protective filing thing I mentioned? If you believe you are disabled and you're applying for SSI or SSD, this is really important for SSI as well, because there is no retro before the date you apply. So if you, and the paperwork can be kind of arduous, and a lot of people can't get it done in even a couple of weeks. So if you file a protective filing, which should attach when you contact the SSA and tell them you want to file for Social Security disability, you might be able to do that online, or you can fax them or UPS them a letter. In theory, you should be able to call them as well, but sometimes it's hard to get through. And then how do you have proof? Anyway, the date you make that contact and express that you plan on filing for SSI, that should be a protective filing date. So write it down and write down how you made that contact. Keep proof of how you made that contact. Proof that they received it, ideally, is what I always do. You then have, I think, 60 days to get the completed full McCoy in on the SSI application. That would include the signed application, and I believe it would probably also include potentially your medical information, which you can find the paper form on SSA-3368, I think still. With Social Security disability, you actually get 6 months to get all the paperwork in. So they give you a much bigger window. I use this a lot with people when I interview with them. We have our first meeting. Sometimes it's a Zoom, sometimes it's over the phone. And there is a suggestion when I'm looking at their information and everything's going through my head while we're talking, that I might want to get them a protective filing date. If they just stopped working full-time last month and they've been working full-time for years, I don't need it. They don't need it, because they're surely going to be able to get their stuff in within 17 months. And remember, that's the time period that you don't have to worry about it. But if they are coming close to expiring that out, even if they're, say, over 12 months, I'm probably going to get them a protective filing date. It'll buy them 6 months. Certainly if they're running out even less time on the 17, I will just throw in a protective filing. What happens if you don't complete your application during the time allotted? Again, SSI 60 days, SSD 6 months. It'll just expire and you will not have applied. So there's no harm, no foul. You can, it's a great way to cancel out. Just don't complete it if you decide you don't want to do it. But it will protect you in the event you just do decide to move forward. Helps you if you want to think about it. Helps you if you want to try to go back to work for a few weeks and see how it works. All sorts of things, you know, and not have to go through the effort of preparing a lot of paperwork for the SSA application. So protective filing dates are very valuable. I use them all the time to preserve past months of benefits that my clients would otherwise lose because they need a lot of time to get their paperwork in. Not all of them, some of them are super fast, everyone's different, but oftentimes some people just, it takes them months to get it done. There's procrastination, there's illness. I sometimes encourage them to do a page a day to get it back to me. That's our data that we then go and draft up the application and all the rest of it. So anyway, I hope this helps you with understanding about retroactive and back due benefits. It does apply to SSI and SSD, but in different ways. Okay. Thank you so much. And you know where to reach me if you need to.